Yo, what's up everybody? Jthe Great here, and welcome back. I have my good friend here, Pinpin, who's actually very knowledgeable in Naruto as well. Did you want to say hi to the people, Pinpin?
Yeah, what's going on, everybody? Huge shout out to Jay for letting me collaborate with him on this one.
Yeah, for sure. And this topic, I would say, is definitely one of the most contentious in the fandom. This is Sasuke versus Jiraiya, as you guys can tell by the title. For thoroughness, we'll discuss all major versions. Obviously, there's a couple that are extremely contentious, but for thoroughness, we'll go through all of them and give our takes on that. So let's start from the very beginning. What would you say about end of part 1 Sasuke, the one that fought Naruto at the Valley End, versus Jiraiya? How would you scale that one?
Well, I would scale Sasuke below Orochimaru. Obviously, he was relative to Old Man Hiruzen throughout the Konoha Crush days. We all know that the Sannin are relative to one another during part 1, so
Yeah,
Jiraiya would be relative to Orochimaru, and Orochimaru would definitely be above part 1 Sasuke because the whole point of Sasuke leaving Konoha initially was to gain power, and that was through Orochimaru. So we can safely say Orochimaru and Jiraiya
exactly.
scale
Yeah.
above Sasuke. Yeah.
Yeah, so to steelman his argument, further reinforce it. Basically, Sasuke is relative to QB the strongest QB Naruto one-tail version we've ever seen. We literally see a sick Orochimaru deal with 3 tails pretty casually, and we all know that the Sannin are relative to some arbitrary extent, hence Jiraiya is relative to that kind of level. In fact, he'd be stronger because Orochimaru was sick. So full power Jiraiya would be stronger than that. So he would easily deal with Naruto, who Sasuke barely dealt with and barely arguably defeated and almost stalemated. So simply put, Jiraiya safely scales above Sasuke at the end of part 1, and there's plenty of empirical evidence. In fact, there's abundance of it to suggest that Sasuke would definitely lose to Jiraiya in part 1. So I think all you guys can agree with that. Obviously, this is not the nitty-gritty and contentious part, but we decided, again, for thoroughness, we decided to throw that in there. Before we get to the contentious ones, there's a quick disclaimer that we thought was important to bring up, and that's so he gets his statement. There are several feats that override this statement in its entirety, such as Pain Actor Sage Mode Naruto, who's stated by the Sage Toad to have surpassed Jiraiya, by the way, blatantly stating inferiority to 5 Kage-sama Sasuke, who's clearly weaker than EMS Sasuke, which again puts that statement into question. Sage Mode Jiraiya punched casually, being caught by one of the weaker past the pain, and later on Naruto, who again is superior to him, doing better against the pains as well. So there's a bunch of empirical evidence to contradict the statement, but did you want to chime in on that or add to that?
Yeah, Orochimaru definitely has some very ambiguous scaling with him, mostly due to statements as you indicated earlier. And
Yeah.
it's more safe for us to back these statements, but what has visually been observed or what feats they have displayed as well. So you
Yeah,
have to take empirical evidence over statements by certain individuals as well.
exactly. So this is a good example of when not to revere statements necessarily. So someone states something that's pretty explicit, you can't necessarily just automatically revere it because you got to look at the context, look at the empirical evidence provided. So the only way you can interpret this as valid is if he means Orochimaru with Edos. Then obviously with Edos, he's stronger than almost anybody. So if he means that, sure. If he doesn't, then there's blatant contradictions to his statement that are empirical, which is, I would say, something to be revered more than compared to a statement. Again, feats, I would say, override statements for the most part. But with that out of the way, because I know people are going to be like, well, it's stated, so this ends the conversation that Orochimaru is stronger than every version of Sasuke up until EMS. Not necessarily. We had to put that in there because I know people bring that up all the time.
People will, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the debunk of that, I guess you could say, or a very good one at the very least. So first contentious one, Jiraiya versus pre-Orochimaru absorption Hebi Sasuke, or early Shippuden Sasuke, however you want to call him. Did you want to start out with that, or you wanted me to start with the scaling?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start.
Alright.
Basically, I'm just going to say this in base. Jiraiya doesn't have much of a chance, and this is simply why. So we see a pre-adolescent, a kid, 4 Tails Naruto, essentially deliver a fatal impact or injury upon Jiraiya during his time as a kid, or a genin, if you will. And we see a later adolescent, more developed Naruto take on Orochimaru, and he himself said that Sasuke is nowhere in your league when he's in 3 Tails. So we can safely deduce that Sasuke in his CM2 state would be at least relative to 4 Tails Naruto during their encounter. And so you can easily scale Sasuke during that time above Jiraiya because he was barely even able to go against a 4 Tails Naruto when he was a kid.
All right. Yeah, so again, folks, this is very contentious, so it's okay if we disagree. So I'm going to give my scaling, and if you want to counter it, or if you have a point of contention, let me know. So now, this is a quite contentious one, so obviously empiricism is the best way to move forward here. Heavy Sasuke is blatantly superior to a bare minimum 3 Tails Naruto level, as Orochimaru states that Naruto's out of Sasuke's league when he battles the 3 Tails Naruto while sick. So clearly he's above that level. We could safely say that. But I'm a little hesitant to say he's stronger than 4 Tails Naruto, as Orochimaru is shown to be visibly concerned, as he clearly underestimated 4 Tails Naruto with his Kusanagi sword not even being able to pierce him, which Orochimaru explicitly stated some concern. So that implies him underestimating the guy and having a much tougher time with 4 Tail than 3 Tail. An important thing to take into consideration with the 4 Tail is the fact that not only does Naruto get the tail amp, which obviously it seems to be implied that each tail he receives amplifies his power, but once he gets to the 4 Tails, he also gets to his V2 stage where his whole body is consumed by the 9 Tails. So I would actually rationally deduce that he gets 2 type of amps. He gets the tail amp, which every tail improves his power and amplifies it, and then he gets V2, right? Obviously these amps are ambiguous, but the point is he seems to get quite the buff from 3 Tail to 4 Tail. We see Orochimaru's concern increase, I would say significantly, after the 4 Tails is introduced and he has to battle that. Again, the Kusanagi sword was not able to pierce him, which visibly puts some concern into Orochimaru's resolve. This would allow me to deduce that Heavy Sasuke is somewhere in between the range of 3 Tails Naruto and full power Orochimaru, with him more than likely being closer to the 3 Tails level, at least in base, since again Orochimaru states that he's not even in his league when he was battling the 3 Tails respectively. Now Jiraiya has been shown and also stated to be on par to Orochimaru, with both of them clearly being Sannin, such as during the 3-way deadlock, when they were both disabled actually to some extent. One was drugged, the other had no arms. Obviously we can debate which was more disabled, but the point is they're relative. But yeah, that's what I would say about that. What do you think about that? Did you have any point of contention with that we can discuss?
No, I mean, I agree. I mean, it's also indicated by the fact that Orochimaru thought he could take on that many-tailed beast form that he was about to hit Orochimaru with, and he put up his triple Rashomon gates, and he thought that would be enough to tank the bomb, essentially, and we saw how much damage that created. So that statement where he said, Sasuke's out of your league, does he mean in CM2? I think that's the more likely interpretation.
More likely, yeah.
I doubt Sasuke's taking him on in base, but
yeah, I agree for sure.
So it's weird to see where Orochimaru really thinks how strong Naruto is, and he's never faced off a version 2 opponent like that before. So there is a little bit of contention there, but I agree,
definitely contention. Yeah, and his change and his expression changing kind of also reinforces the notion that he underestimated Naruto, especially once he hit 4 Tails. With 3 Tails, he was able to deal with him. He seemed pretty confident and comfortable. That's where the statement came in. But once 4 Tails came, he was like, "Wow, this is something else. I can't even really block his Biju bombs. He's only getting stronger. I'm gonna have to evade. I'm too sick here." And again, Sasuke admits inferiority to a sicker Orochimaru that he defeats later on. He says the only reason I beat him was because he was this sick, implying that he might not even have been able to defeat the previous Orochimaru that fought Naruto. He might have been too well as far as his health concerned. I feel like Sasuke waited until he was damn near dead to go after him. He was coughing up blood. Kabuto was very worried, as we can recall. He was worried about him. He's like, "You're not gonna make it. I'm gonna have to try to take care of you." That's when Sasuke said, "All right, it's time to get him." And that's when he was just weak enough to take him on, and he admits that. So that all reinforces the notion that Sasuke might not quite be Sannin level yet, with Jiraiya being implied to be relative to full power Orochimaru. So simply put, I do think Jiraiya more than likely takes it. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but I would say most definitely Seismo Jiraiya takes it. What would your
I would say in Seismo, it's more than likely he would take it. Take
more than
on
likely.
Sasuke, especially a pre-Orochimaru, because like you said, they're relative, and Orochimaru was in fact trying to take his body hostage as opposed to killing him too. So he was holding back. You know what I mean? And Sasuke even admitted inferiority. So. It just reinforces that notion, So I think the only contentious part is perhaps in base because of our scaling with 4 Tails Naruto and what Orochimaru said.
Right, in base,
In Sage mode, more than definitely, I would see Jiraiya taking on Sasuke. He's got more than enough battle experience, ninjutsu variety up in his arsenal, and many ways to take on an inexperienced Sasuke may have, so yeah.
Yeah, and now I guess we'll discuss how we think the fight would go. So obviously Kirin comes into the discussion. He obviously had the ability to use it, as when he was about to kill Team 7 with one shot. He was very confident that he would take him out with one Kirin. So As far as how the fight would go, again, I think Jiraiya just scales above him in tangible aspects, with it being implied and narratively implied many times throughout the narrative that he's relative or on par, damn near, with full power Orochimaru. Again, I think he'll probably have superior AP at this point, with arguably Kirin maybe being the only thing that could contend with his AP. Even so, I don't even think that would at this point, with pre-absorption. Also, the speed factor with Sage Mode, I don't think even CS2 would keep up with Sage Mode Jiraiya, to be quite honest. Even a sick Orochimaru can keep up with 3-tail, and even 4-tail to some extent. Not very much, but to some extent. I don't think Sasuke was even as strong as that, so I doubt that he would keep up with full power Sage Mode Jiraiya. I think Jiraiya, has the hacks, has the experience. Sasuke is very intelligent. I think experience sometimes triumphs, especially the large gap in age between the two. Jiraiya just knows how things works, while Sasuke is more so a person that deduces things mid-battle, new aspects of battle. Jiraiya has more experience. Again, I think tangibly, as far as all those aspects, AP, speed, durability, etc., I think he triumphs in those as well. So overall, I would say in the majority of cases, Jiraiya wins against this version of Sasuke, and I think we both agree with that. So that's that one, folks. Yeah.
I just want to say also, I don't believe Genjutsu would play much of a factor here as well, especially if Jiraiya's in Sage Mode and he has Ma and Pa to break him out of that if that were to occur. So
Genjutsu. Genjutsu is an interesting one, I do agree. And Jiraiya is more than aware of what Uchihas are capable of, like Sasuke. I'm sure he'd be prepared for that. But overall, I think, like we said, in most cases, Jiraiya would win, and most definitely would win in all cases in Sage Mode. So,
no doubt.
So now, this is even more contentious. So now we're moving on to Jiraiya versus Hebi Sasuke post Orochimaru absorption. Did you want to go into that? What do you think about that one?
Okay, so I wanted to talk about Sasuke's ninjutsu and what he's done against Itachi, because that's his most prominent feats, with Hebi Sasuke being this current iteration of him.
Yeah.
And so, as we know with Itachi the whole time, he's holding back.
For sure.
Himself multiple times. We know what Itachi's ulterior motives are later on in the series, so it's hard to take these feats hyper literally. So just mind you before we get into all this.
Yeah, exactly.
But we do see a lot of neat jutsus like the Chidori Stream. He has Genjutsu, obviously. He has the Dragon Flame Jutsu. He has this really neat Shuriken Jutsu that he amplifies with Chidori as well. Yeah, and most importantly, he's got Kirin as well, which we'll get into later. But he's got a great arsenal for sure, which amps him, especially with the Orochimaru being absorbed, which, from what I can deduce, gives him more chakra, more stamina, more speed. Perhaps I can't quantify exactly how much, but it does seem to amp him a good bit. So
most definitely. And what we do know for sure is that it definitely amplifies the durability to, I would say, a significant extent. He literally admits, I'm healing faster after battle. Definitely healing faster now with the Orochimaru absorbed. So this one is quite possibly the most contentious out of all the matchups that we have here to discuss. So what we do know is that he clearly gets an amp from Orochimaru's abilities and absorbing Orochimaru. But the question is, how much? That's the contentious part that people to this day still debate. Some people think he's still not Sannin level. Some people think he is. Some people think he's even stronger than Orochimaru was at full power. So the best way to approach this, we decided, was to come up with more so rational arguments. There isn't much empirically to quantify. So we're going to try to talk about a few tangible aspects. So the first is durability. So if we're comparing feats, Sasuke survives Amaterasu against his brother. Again, take it with a grain of salt. He was holding back. Maybe he didn't go all out. I wouldn't disagree there. He gets his wing blown off by Deidara, who definitely had killer intent, and he, I would say, recovered very nicely. Still was able to battle, etc. And again, we go back to the statement where he implies he's healing much quicker. So I would say he, at bare minimum, has superior durability to a very, very weak Orochimaru, I would say, bare minimum, if Orochimaru is that sick. Now, when we talk Jiraiya's durability, we gotta look at his feats. Jiraiya, again, like Pimpin said earlier, he was mortally wounded by 4-tail Naruto and nearly dies from it. He literally explicitly states it himself, I almost died. I'm mortally wounded, look at this scar. It's a deep scar. Again, to be fair, it wasn't Sage Mode Jiraiya, but nonetheless, that was a full power Jiraiya, and that's how much damage a weaker 4-tail Naruto did against him compared to the one that fought a sick Orochimaru, I would say, because, again, for you guys that forget, the seal weakens over time, right? That's why Orochimaru, during Chunin exams, tightened it again. He didn't want the risk of it seeping out too much to the point where he can't handle Naruto, right? So he tightens it because he knows it's weakening, right? So that definitely reinforces that. So when comparing the two feats, right, with the puzzle pieces I just laid out, I would tend to believe that a sick Orochimaru, thanks to heavy experimentation and modifications, is more durable than Jiraiya, again based off their performances against the Four Tails, with Four Tail Naruto being stronger against Orochimaru than Jiraiya.
In base. Yeah.
And that's in base, by the way, yeah. And I would also deduce that a full power heavy Sasuke with Orochimaru's abilities would be more durable, like I said earlier, to a dying Orochimaru. Hence, transitively, I would conclude heavy Sasuke is more durable than at least base Jiraiya. So, what do you think about the durability?
Durability is quite an interesting one because again, Itachi really isn't going all out against the battle against him. All you really have to go off is Deidara's fight with Sasuke during that time. It's more of like, you know, someone going all out and giving him the most trouble, if you will.
Yeah.
There's nothing that Sasuke took against Itachi that was really supposed to inflict mortal wounds. Like the Amaterasu, he just got out of it with Orochimaru's substitution jutsu, and it was never a real danger. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So. Yeah. Yeah, and people that like to revere his fight against Itachi, they're definitely being disingenuous because he's clearly holding back, because Etsu implies it. The only time he's ever really shocked, which we'll discuss soon, is during Kirin. He's like, oh shit, what the hell is this? So he had to bring out the Susanoo. Not to mention he was almost dead at that point anyway. That was the only time I was like, okay, he's genuinely reacting to something. Everything else, he was like, all right, I'm gonna go just hard enough to where he believes he's beating me, to feel like the hero, to be the hero he always should have been. So yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now the next aspect.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the next aspect is speed. You want to start out with that one? I think that's one of the first things we disagreed on during our prep before the video, but you can go into speed if you want.
Yeah, so with Jiraiya specifically, in Sage mode that is, there really isn't many speed feats for him to give an exact quantification of where he's at as a shinobi, but we know that like lower tier shinobi in Konoha, like Kakashi for example, are able to react to lightning like with Chidori, and it doesn't seem like being a lightning timer isn't something far-fetched for a shinobi of his caliber. Yeah. So someone as respected as Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin, shouldn't be far-fetched for any of us to believe that he can't react to a lightning-based attack, which is where I'm getting at with Kirin or even Chidori or Chidori Stream. These are all lightning-based attacks, and so I think his reaction is on par, especially with Ma and Pa and Senjutsu amping him. In terms of combat speed, the biggest thing that we have for him is being able to essentially blitz the summoning path with the massive Rasengan before even his sandal drops on the floor, which is quite impressive in itself, you know?
Yeah. Now, I'll say... Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, but I'll say the tough part about the pains is there's a fluctuation in power. Obviously, they're strongest in the Rain Village. We know that. But what seems inconsistent is that Kakashi reacts to Tendo Pain, but Jiraiya fails to blitz the Animal Path, and actually states, for you guys that don't catch this, that his fastest attack failed to catch... I believe it was the Summoning Path. He said, my Kenbari Shenbon is my fastest attack with the widest radius.
Widest attack, yeah.
Yeah. Keyword, fastest attack, and he still failed to blitz the Path of Pain, yet Kakashi reacts to Tendo Pain. We could argue that Tendo Pain was casually toying with him, that's fine. But it just seems a little consistent. Now, when it comes to speed, Heavy Sasuke, that we do know, is stated to be superior in speed by Deidara several times. He says he's too quick, etc., which is backed up empirically by Sasuke, one, upping Deidara during their battle constantly. He was always a step ahead when it came to Deidara. That's implied until Deidara had to resort to his final attack where he killed himself. So now Sage Jiraiya, like I said, fails to blitz the Animal Path, who is one of the weaker Paths of Pain, right, which is also supported by their success race against Sage Mode Naruto later on. Naruto claps all the weaker Paths of Pain, and the only one that can contend with his AP and speed is the Tendo Path. Now, that's not a concrete scaling. You could just argue, well, it's because Nagato's concentrating all his chakra into Tendo now. Fine, but the point is, there definitely seems to be a hierarchy, and I do believe Tendo Pain is the strongest Path to Pain. I think that's backed up empirically quite a bit of times. But this allows me to kind of lean towards Heavy Sasuke when it comes to speed. Deidara was able to go toe-to-toe with Gaara, who's a Kage level threat. He was able to outrun the Two Tails. He was able to, well, he got caught by Kami, but he was able to not get killed by it necessarily. So Deidara definitely is fast. And if I compare his feats to, let's say, the Paths of Pain, the weakest ones where even Konohamaru was able to kill, I lean towards Deidara being faster than those Paths of Pain. Respectively. Agreed. So because of that, all these empirical pieces of evidence lead me to say that Heavy Sasuke is probably faster, definitely in CS2, I'd say. Yeah, so that's what I would say about that. What do you think
Yeah,
about that
and
scaling?
I mean it's completely valid. It's also kind of supported by when we watch the show and during that time when we see Sasuke and Itachi, during that time Sasuke is portrayed as one of the fastest shinobi that we're currently aware of. You know, we don't
Yeah,
know anything about the Raikage or the full extent of Killer B or etc. or KCM characters. So it is shown that Sasuke is one of the fastest shinobi, but I think it's almost like a case of like Tobirama versus Madara. You may be
right.
faster in combat, or Raikage versus Old Man Hiruzen, right? I think you may be faster in combat speed, but I think the whole point of Toad Sage mode is to amp one's precognition almost similarly to the Mangekyo, if you will, and
Right.
then also amp everything else, of course. But I think if Jiraiya is in Sage mode, he would be able to react accordingly to anything Sasuke may be trying to do, especially with Ma and Pa on his shoulders.
Right. That's a good argument. Yeah, the speed with Sage Mode is definitely amplified. That's for sure. But to counter that, I think. Well, this is implying they start out base to base. Jiraiya would fail to get into Sage Mode entirely because it does take 5 whole minutes to get into Sage Mode anyway. So if we're presupposing that they're in base, Sasuke can pretty much almost instantaneously get into CS2. It takes a couple seconds maybe, but Jiraiya would need 5 whole minutes. He would need a place where he could do it without there being any interference, similar to how he needed it during his fight with the Passive Pains in the Rain Village. He had to keep evading and had to find a place to pair and get Ma and Pa on his shoulders safely, and everything would have to synergize optimally. So if we presuppose they're starting out in base, I think Sasuke would definitely have the speed advantage. Now, let's say he even does get in Sage Mode, I would presuppose Sasuke, having the intelligence he does, would deduce how that works and would try all different things to see if he could get rid of it or negate it or turn it off, and probably would fuck with the toads. And him having a lot of long range kind of abilities such as, Chidori's Stream could possibly negate Sage Mode or even undo it. So that's possible as well. So if we're talking about Sage Mode Jiraiya versus Heavy Sasuke CS2, it's possible that he's faster. Again, I just think empirically, I lean towards Sasuke because, again, Jiraiya failed to even blitz a weaker path with his fastest attack on top of that, and Heavy Sasuke is stated to be blatantly superior to Deidara. And one-ups him several times. But yeah, guys, you let us know who you agree with. Again, this is super contentious.
Yeah, do you guys think Sage Mode Jiraiya has the adequate enough reactionary speed to contend against Sasuke?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's only if he starts in Sage Mode, like you said. Where are they fighting? Do they start off? Does Jiraiya rather start off in Sage Mode? Does he have Ma and Pa? The battle changes tremendously if these factors aren't equated into the situation.
Exactly, yeah. So the situation wouldn't matter. Now, we can almost concretely all agree that if they're in base to base, Jiraiya would be at a big disadvantage, and if he's in Sage Mode already, starting out, he'd have a much better chance. The speed gap, whether you believe it's for Jiraiya or against him, would be much smaller if he was in base, and that's the point. At that point, the fight would more than likely be a contentious and competitive one, in comparison to him just in base, having to go against CS2 Sasuke like right off the jump. Again, this is extremely contentious. So let us know what you think about that. Now, the next aspect, and arguably even more contentious in speed, is their AP. Now, I've seen some of the best scalers debate over this, so I guess I'll go first this time. So, going over AP, Heavy Sasuke, one of his greatest jutsus is obviously Kirin. It was his trump card against Itachi, where he thought it would be. And now, if we're trying to calculate the AP of it, it's somewhere in between large hill to small mountain size, depending on how you scale the size of the Uchiha hideout, which he destroyed thoroughly. So, the best rational deduction would be it's somewhere in between that range. I don't think it's the size of a large mountain. I don't think the hideout was that big. Even in the manga, it shows trees parallel or perpendicular to the hideout, and they don't look much smaller than the hideout. So it's definitely not a large mountain that he destroyed with Kirin. That's why I would scale the Kirin at least. But is that enough to scale Sasuke to that AP? I'm not very sure. Again, he was heavily fatigued. He was almost out of chakra, etc. And his AP more than likely is probably higher. But is that enough to scale his above Jiraiya's? That's tough as well. Jiraiya has a giant Rasengan, which is canonically stated explicitly to be able to carve out mountains. Now, this is extremely contentious. Some people think it's hyper literal. Some people think it's hyperbolic. What do you think about their AP? What would you say about that?
I tend to go with the notion that the giant Rasengan does have enough attack potency to carve out a mountain, as the databook states, and if one can exert that much force, and one must be able to tank that much force as well. Otherwise, your body literally just can't handle that. So I think that his AP would transitively relate to his durability as well. Now, I would say with Kirin, I think we both can agree that that is Sasuke's highest AP jutsu that he uses at that current time, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
And it was a jutsu that was, it required a lot of prerequisites, you know? So
Yeah,
Itachi and Sasuke, two of the best fireball jutsu users in all of the Shinobi Alliance, utilize that jutsu. They go all out on that one. Then Itachi does an Amaterasu to override Sasuke's fireball, and then he uses Amaterasu again. It starts burning the surrounding trees. It's continuously burning,
yeah,
and all this immense heat is heating up the ambient temperature to an extreme degree. I mean, Amaterasu is the hottest fire jutsu that we know of, you know. So and there's a lot of prerequisites to make Kirin as strong as it was during that time.
yeah.
And even with that prerequisites met, it was only able to arguably be able to take on a small mountain. So
Right, yeah.
even that Kirin, in my estimation, I think Jiraiya in Sage Mode will be able to tank. Just because if his AP is able to exert that much, he should be able to take
Right.
attack of that caliber as well. You know.
Right. So yeah, basically Pimpin saying that, which I do agree with this part, that Kieran, the execution of that Kieran specifically had like the perfect conditions met. Amaterasu is arguably one of the hottest jutsu in the entire verse, stated to be like around the temperature of the sun. Maybe you can interpret that hyperbolic or not, but the point is it is extremely hot and definitely hotter than the most regular fireball jutsus and things of that nature. So the extreme heat and the cloudy weather and etc. was just the perfect storm figuratively, and I would say hyper literally, for Sasuke to use Kirin. So someone could counter and say, well, that wasn't a typical Kirin's AP, hence a typical Kirin under normal conditions has less AP, which I do agree. I think that's definitely possible. I do think heat and all these prerequisites must be met for Sasuke to adequately use it. So I would say in most cases it would take him longer to use Kirin, such as against Jiraiya. It probably would take him longer. Now, the AP is extremely contentious. Now, as far as my perspective, as far as the carving out mountain statement, I do find it contentious. I know people say, well, Naruto with one giant Rasengan was able to dent the Nine-Tails' tail and push him back and threaten him. That's fair. The Nine-Tails is easily above mountain level. It could probably destroy much larger bodies of land than that, to be honest. But that was a perfect sage mode, probably stronger even than the one that fought Pain. That was when he was taming the Nine-Tails. Also, Jiraiya, again, is not even a perfect sage. He's an imperfect sage, which, from what we can imply, the amp that he gets is definitely smaller, or pales in comparison to the amp that Naruto gets with having perfect sage mode.
Definitely.
So there's a possibility that his giant Rasengan isn't as powerful as Naruto's when he's in sage mode. Do I think he can carve out mountains? When I think about carving out mountains, I think about Madara slicing mountains with his perfect Susanoo. You could argue semantics and say, wait, he's not carving out mountains, he's one-shotting mountains, which I guess is different, to be fair. Now, Jiraiya's AP, in comparison to heavy Sasuke's, at least in Sage mode, it's tough. That's probably the most contentious part. I would say that his AP, at best, isn't large mountain level. I tend not to believe that. There isn't much empirically for me to conclude that. Again, there isn't much empirically at all, to be honest. But overall, as far as AP, I would lean towards Sasuke. And another argument I would make is, if I'm not mistaken, when Sasuke used Kirin, was he in CS2 or base? That's one thing
He was in base.
Yeah, so he was in
He was
base.
pretty much out of chakra.
Yeah, he was out of chakra. We got to keep in mind there were perfect conditions met for the Kirin. That I will agree with. Amaterasu, and it was a cloudy day, and the Amaterasu went up in the atmosphere and created the perfect clouds for this Kirin. But yeah, but what wasn't optimal for him was, one, his chakra levels. Two, what he couldn't even use Curse Mark, which amplifies him multiple times. And simply put, at his strongest, let's say that he was able to use CS2 and he was full power, I think Kirin's AP would have been significantly more. It probably would have, I mean, this is all headcanon, but it probably would have destroyed quite a bit more than just the hideout. If anything, if anything, it's even possible that it might have even went through Susanoo, because from what I remember in the manga, Itachi, because he was dying, this is the only reason why he had a hard time reacting, he barely was able to put up his skeleton Susanoo, if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't even fully armored, if I'm not mistaken, to block it. Yeah, so his reaction time was very bad. So simply put, I think a full power Sasuke's AP is probably more than that. It's hard to quantify how much more. So I would lean towards Sasuke having the AP advantage. But again, if you want to counter me or have another thought, you can go ahead. This is very contentious. So
it is contentious. I just think in character, Sasuke won it. Like, use Kirin off rip. You know,
Right. Yeah, that I
just,
agree with.
that's
Yeah.
something he would do. And
Yeah.
then I also just want to emphasize on the fact that Kirin is essentially like Sasuke manipulating thunder that's been
Right.
created from this like atmospheric pressure and heat being combined to form these clouds in the first place. So
Right.
I Senjutsu, nature chakra, like Jiraiya would be able to sense like huge thunder about to be like struck upon him. You know what I mean? I just
Yeah.
think that would make rational sense. So
Right.
even if he does go and use it, which I don't think he would do off the beginning of the battle. It's not something he would do as in character. But even if he did, I think Jiraiya would be able to sense it from like a mile away, like literally. And
Right.
then he has so many like escape jutsus, like the reverse summon, or he can just escape somehow, So I
Yeah,
don't
he does have a
see
lot
it
of
really
that. That's
being a
true.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so I think it all comes down to speed and speed and AP because I think we agree with the durability for the most part, but speed and AP are like the most contentious. So I guess for us to give our conclusions here, unless we want to counter each other more, for speed, I would say Heavy Sasuke, based off empiricism, most likely has the advantage against Jiraiya. Failed to even blitz one of the weaker passive pain with his fastest attack, which he stated explicitly, while Heavy Sasuke was just blatantly superior to Dator in speed. So I would give the empirical impressiveness of their feats to Sasuke again. And if we presuppose that Jiraiya is not even in stage mode, then I think the speed gap is even larger.
Yeah.
Because he would need 5 minutes. Yeah, so I
No
would say that
doubt.
about speed. And AP is extremely contentious. The best we could do is speculate. I think Heavy Sasuke at full power would manipulate the environment at a greater level because he has more chakra, especially if he's in CS2, and the AP of his Kirin would be significantly more, I could almost say safely, than it was against Itachi. You could argue, well, the Amaterasu amped it by quite a bit. That's fair. I still think at full power, with the 10 times multiplier, it's hard not to say that it wouldn't be amped. So I would lean towards Sasuke having more AP, and for Jiraiya, in the whole statement saying he can carve out mountains, I tend to think of Madara. Again, semantics matters. Now, Naruto is significantly stronger than Jiraiya, and honestly, I don't even think his giant Rasengan would carve a mountain, a large mountain, to be quite honest. This statement doesn't fall into like easily hyperbolic. I'll admit that. It's not like I can't just easily deduce, yeah, it's hyperbolic because it is contentious. Yeah. It's in the realm of like hyperliteral and hyperbolic. It's in that zone somewhere, and it really depends on your interpretation. But I would probably give the AP advantage to Sasuke as well. So, if you want to give your conclusions or counter mine.
Yeah, I think the only reason, just to touch upon what you said about like the hyperbolic aspect to it, perhaps, is that it is the Rasengan. It's like one of the most like prominent and relevant jutsus in the whole series, and that stage mode on top of that, which at least gives it 10 times amp. Even Jiraiya, who's an imperfect stage,
right?
I think rationally, I can see it having that much AP. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
In a battle between two of them, I think Sasuke's limited arsenal just wouldn't play much of a role for two of them. Yeah. Let's say if he does want to use Kirin, he would have to exert a lot of his own chakra to make fire jutsus happen in the first place. So he would already be weak by the time he can even summon Kirin in the first place, Right. And then, like you said, if Jiraiya's not in stage mode with Mom and Pa, this is a lot more in favor for Sasuke because he's a lot faster. Jiraiya doesn't have the reactionary speed that he would have in stage mode. His actual physical speed, his ninjutsu arsenal would be limited as well. But he does have, more summonings. I think he shows a more consistent array of ninjutsus that do more consistent AP. And he's very crafty. He has like the Toad Subjugation Shadow Art Jutsu, or the Dark Swamp, or the Reverse Summoning, or he has a lot of things that he can utilize. He's a very crafty ninja. So
So, folks, this is very contentious, and you let us know. But I guess the last thing we'll do, unless we want to keep debating or pseudo debating, is give how we think the fight would go. So, how do you think if they were to fight, how do you think that would go?
Yeah, so I mean, Sasuke in character, I mean, he is exceptionally well at using Genjutsu. I mean, even against Deidara, who's supposed to be trained against Mangekyo-based Genjutsu, was fooled by Sasuke. You know what I mean? And this is a lot. This is a lot before the one Sasuke were talking about that fought Itachi. So I think he would use Genjutsu pretty quickly and efficiently. I don't think Jiraiya would have enough time to get in stage mode personally,
Right.
unless he's like in the rain village or something that would really
Right.
help that situation.
Yeah, environment definitely matters. It definitely matters, yeah.
So I think Sasuke has the adequate combat speed, the Genjutsu parlor tricks, if you will, up front, and would actually be able to contend with Jiraiya quite easily in base, just because of our like Four Tails Naruto scaling
Right.
from early as
Yeah,
well. So
exactly.
that's how
Yeah,
I think it would
so
actually go. Yeah.
yeah, so for me, I do agree with Pimpin. Environment greatly matters. If Jiraiya has access to an environment that's filled with hiding spots and a very large and confusing layout, then he might find a way and a time to get into stage mode. That's if we presuppose he's not in it, so I'll start with that as well. If they're in the same environment that Deidara fought Sasuke in, Jiraiya's at a huge disadvantage if he's not in stage mode. Sasuke, like Pimpin said, has Genjutsu, which he utilizes pretty well. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, even Deidara got caught on one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And that's someone who's trained specifically to try and combat Genjutsu after he got humiliated by Itachi. He trained it, and he even said this eye, I believe he has an eye that's like what he implies or states is immune to it, and he still fell to it, knowing what Uchihas are capable of very well. He specifically trained for Uchiha Genjutsu, still fell to not get caught by it, so base Jiraiya would have some trouble against that. Sasuke would definitely exploit that. Like I said, I think he has a speed advantage. I do admit Jiraiya has a ton of hacks. If anything, I don't think he would die. I think he would probably reverse summon himself out of there. But if it's base Jiraiya versus Sasuke, in the majority of cases, I see him losing. And if it's in the right environment where it's advantageous to him, he has a better chance. But due to the speed advantage and Sasuke's arsenal, I still think he probably loses. Now, if it's Sage Mode Jiraiya versus Heavy Sasuke, this is extremely interesting. It really depends on how you interpret their speed and AP comparisons. In terms of hacks, Jiraiya has the advantage, I'd say that. But I would say they're more so for evading. I don't see him killing Sasuke per se, any of them. So, especially considering that Sasuke could fly, so if they're in the toad stomach where acid goes through everything, he would just fly as well in CS2. Overall, empirically and rationally, I tend to lean towards Sasuke. But folks, let us know who you think wins. It all depends on your interpretations. The statement about Jiraiya's giant Rasengan, does it really carve out mountains or is it hyperbolic? Sasuke's speed, is Sage Jiraiya failing to blitz a weaker path to pain at their strongest enough to deduce he's slower than Sasuke even in Sage mode? Things like that. So it all depends on your interpretation. Let us know who you agree with, or maybe you don't agree with either one of us, but let us know. That's probably the most contentious one, for sure.
It really is, because there's not much empirical evidence on Jiraiya's.
It's all rational, yeah.
It is a lot of rational, headcanon.
It's inevitable. You really can't avoid headcanon, because it's besides that, there's really no way to compare them. But
yeah, it's not like Jiraiya can blink in the Sage mode like Minato can.
Exactly, yeah. So all that matters.
It really matters.
Yeah, it matters a lot. So let us know what you agree with, folks. That's probably the most contentious by far. But moving on to Taka Sasuke versus Jiraiya. What do you think about that one?
Okay, so if we're taking like the Taka Sasuke like at the end of like Killer Bee fight, I can see him presenting more of a threat, because he is starting to get more aware of his abilities with Amaterasu and Kagasuchi as well.
Right.
He's able to almost like instantly be able to, make his flames malleable by extinguishing Killer Bee's flames and being able to take him hostage for the Katsuki. He's able to save Karin. But prior to the fact, he was getting his butt whipped pretty readily. He had been saved by Jugo and Karin. You know what I mean? And I would say Jiraiya is probably able to take on Sasuke in the beginning, Taka Sasuke, but Taka Sasuke at the very end, when he's starting to get more adapted with his abilities, I think is more contentious, because it really comes down to like, can Jiraiya go into Sage mode? If he does, is he able to blitz Sasuke before Sasuke can even like look at him and put on Amaterasu?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the way I look at this is a very important fact that I think a lot of people overlook. Taka Sasuke wasn't at full power against Killer Bee. He actually states, I think Jugo states that he's still healing from the fight with Itachi. And then Sasuke, I believe, responds by saying, yeah, I'm definitely healing much slower, which implies his durability is blatantly inferior to his heavy post-absorption Orochimaru version. He clearly has inferior durability and regeneration. in comparison to that version. So that we can safely say is inferior. People do love to compare Taka Sasuke to Heavy Sasuke, but again, it's not a fair comparison because if we're taking the specific version that fought Killer Bee, that wasn't even full power Taka Sasuke anyway. He was beaten, not to mention that he was very unaware, or I would say unexperienced with his MS. So that version of Sasuke, if we're talking about him being fatigued and all, he probably would have a tough time with Sage Mode Jiraiya. It's hard to quantify his speed at that point. He's fatigued, so it's clearly not an optimal level. His AP is not an optimal level. None of it is, because he's fatigued and beaten. A specific version of Sasuke, I might lean towards Jiraiya, especially Sage Mode Jiraiya. I think because he's beaten down, he doesn't really even know how to use MS yet. He only used it out of desperation.
Exactly.
Yeah. So by himself against Sage Mode Jiraiya, he might fall to him. If we're talking about Killer Bee fight Sasuke. He's weakened. It's hard to quantify where he's at specifically, but he's clearly not at full power, struggling to even deal with a casual Killer Bee. He's not even going all out, and he's still taking him to town. So
yeah, he's just, you know, writing raps in his book.
Yeah, he's literally writing raps while Sasuke was trying to hit him. Like, it's blatant superiority. Blatant. So I will tend to lead with Sage Mode Jiraiya here. I think Sasuke would just not be well equipped to deal with him, especially if he's bloodlusted. So now,
yeah, I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's probably what we would go with. Let us know if you guys disagree. I know some of you would say he has MS though. He's much faster. He has the hate amp. He's way faster. He's way more powerful. That's not a crazy deduction, but again, he's fatigued. He's beaten, and Killer Bee's toying with him. I mean, he wasn't really trying until the very end when he was about to kill him with, you know, a V2 attack. So
yeah, he's more likely to like try to use his Genjutsu or like his Chidori stream or something of that sort before even using his MS abilities, because he doesn't even know what they are from the get-go.
Yeah, he really doesn't even understand them yet, and it's clear that he only used it right before he was about to die. Like, that saved his life. So yeah, he definitely doesn't even know what he's doing at this point. So continuing on with the comparisons, you know, it's Taka Sasuke and Heavy Sasuke. People always argue, well, Heavy Sasuke is stronger because of CS2, which gives him a bare minimum of 10 times amp. Fair. However, what people don't keep in mind, like I said, is that Taka Sasuke wasn't at full power. So again, it's hard to compare the two, but rationally, I lean towards Jiraiya winning in this one, with me obviously previously saying Heavy Sasuke probably beats Jiraiya because he's full power, he has CS2, it's a different arsenal, etc. So I would say this specific Taka Sasuke is probably weaker than Heavy Sasuke, if we're talking about this specific version. Now, let's get to 5 Kage-sama Sasuke. Things change quite a bit.
Dramatically, yeah.
So full power Taka Sasuke is able to react to the Great Kage, having killer intent, by the way. He, I believe, went up to V2 and was still reacting, was able to summon, you know, Amaterasu on his Susanoo in time to kill or stalemate the Great Kage, which implies his high reaction times. He's very fast at this point. I think we can all agree he's faster than Jiraiya, even Sage Mode. Definitely faster at this point at full power. So he definitely has a speed advantage. Durability, that's hard to quantify, but the Susanoo would be a part of it anyway. So we'd have to take that in consideration. Durability wouldn't really be as important since he has Susanoo, which allows him to take more hits, things of that nature, etc. As far as AP, I feel like 5 Kage-sama Sasuke is very hacksy. He has Amaterasu and all these abilities. Indra's Arrow. His Genjutsu, I would say, has been improved as well, where he literally out Genjutsus, I guess you could say, a Genjutsu specialist.
Yeah,
exactly. So that's extremely impressive. You know, that's like an Itachi on Kuronai type feat, where he fodderizes a Genjutsu specialist as well when he was toying with, you know, the Jonin and the Leaf. So that's pretty impressive, and I would say that would be a huge problem for Jiraiya as well, that level of Genjutsu. So overall, I think he's superior to even Sage Mode Jiraiya, to be quite honest. I think with his hacks, he would take him out. But what did you think about 5 Kage-sama Sasuke versus Jiraiya?
Yeah, I agree completely. I recall that, you know, the Susanoo that Sasuke manifested that was able to tank the Liger Bomb and tank 2 attacks from, I believe, a V2 Right Kage going at full speed because he was not trying to hold back. You know, he saw Sasuke as a threat. You know, so.
He did. Yeah, he wanted to kill him for sure.
And then we know Sage Mode Naruto admits inferiority to Sasuke as well, and we all know that Naruto as a Sage Mode is superior to his sensei, which is Jiraiya, is what we're talking about as well. So there's multiple ways to scale it, but his feats against the Raikage were absolutely insane. You know
Yeah,
what I
those
mean?
are very impressive. And yeah, like Pimpin said, there's literally a chain that can be created by Naruto's statement. He says, I'm not strong enough to beat you. And this is a blind Sasuke almost. He's like, I would have to use a QB. So, full power, 5 Kage Summon Sasuke is definitely stronger than Sage Mode Naruto, who's blatantly stated to be above Jiraiya, and also empirically shown as well with their performances against Pain, respectively. So, it's pretty easy. It's almost borderline axiomatic. Not quite. Gotta explain a little bit, but yeah, it's almost self-evident. It's almost self-evident that Sasuke would go to town on Jiraiya. Even in Sage Mode, he'd be at his mercy, and it wouldn't end well for Jiraiya. He'd probably have to reverse summon himself out of there because he's gonna die. So
That's his only ploy, bro. At that point,
exactly.
Yeah.
So for you folks that are like, how is Taka Sasuke, the one that fought Killer Bee, weaker than Heavy Sasuke? Isn't he supposed to get stronger? Not necessarily. Again, guys, the context matters. You know, the exact parameters established for each fight matters. It's not as simple as, oh, this is later on, so he's stronger. Not necessarily.
No,
that's not exactly the case. So yeah, so early Taka Sasuke loses, and 5 Kage Summon Sasuke most definitely wins almost every time. I mean, that's pretty self-evident. I think you guys would agree with us. So now for thoroughness, I believe from this point on it becomes damn near axiomatic as far as the conclusion, because it's pretty clear who's superior now. So EMS Sasuke versus Jiraiya. What would you say about that one?
Well, I mean, it's quite clear that Jiraiya wins.
Yeah.
No, you know, it doesn't matter what EMS variation we're talking about. It could be the very early war arc where he's relative to Edo Itachi. It could be late war arc where he's relative to KCM2 Naruto. These characters are transcendent shinobi who are incredibly fast, incredibly hacked, and just their AP potential is ridiculous. You can easily scale Edo Itachi to a KCM1 Naruto. He said himself he's stronger than Sage Mode Naruto, who's stronger than Sage Mode Jiraiya again.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's nothing Jiraiya can do except reverse summon him and just try to get the hell out of there. But
yeah, he'd have to evade immediately because Sasuke's gonna take him out very quickly. It's pretty clear. I mean, again, this is basically axiomatic, but for the sake of arguing, EMS Sasuke scales to Edo Itachi, who is in between the range of KCM1 since he's blatantly superior to him and saved him from being killed by Nagato, who he blitzed, who again implies Nagato's faster than KCM1. And he's in between KCM1 and KCM2. He's in between that range, again, because of his performance against Edo Nagato and Sage Mode Kabuto as well, which he was holding back, by the way, because he couldn't kill him. So he's probably even faster if he's going all out with killer intent. So that puts him in that range, which is definitely blatantly extremely superior to Jiraiya. Jiraiya's not even above Sage Mode Naruto, let alone full power KCM1 or KCM2 for that matter. So he gets absolutely wrecked. Blitzed. He probably wouldn't even have time to reverse summon, to be honest. He'd probably get blitzed immediately by EMS Sasuke and one-shotted by maybe Indra's arrow or something like that. He would stand no chance whatsoever. He'd get stomped in probably almost every scenario, unless Sasuke was, being dumb or something that day. But
you can best believe there's no way Jiraiya will have 5 minutes to get into Sage Mode with EMS Sasuke too.
Yeah, so. No way. Yeah, he'd get blitzed immediately.
2 seconds, bro. Yeah, if that.
Yeah. So that's basically axiomatic. I hope everyone agrees with that. If you don't, then you probably should reread or rewatch at Naruto because it's not close. So the next one, 6-pass Sasuke versus Jiraiya. This is even more of a whipping. Yeah, this is even more axiomatic. Simply put, Sasuke scales to 10-tailed Jobidara, who scales above Jubito, who scales above Hashirama, who he himself would one-shot Jiraiya. Hence, 6-path Rinnegan Sasuke absolutely stomps Jiraiya. I don't know if you want to add to that. It's not even close.
It's not even close. I mean, what is Jiraiya doing against a perfect Susanoo? There's nothing on that part.
He would just step on him.
Bypass that durability. Yeah, he just step on him. You know what I mean?
Step on him. That's it. Jiraiya's blatantly inferior.
Battle. Yeah.
Yeah. So the final one, for thoroughness again, final one is Adult Sasuke versus Jiraiya. So Adult Sasuke scales to direct Otsutsuki levels. He literally went toe-to-toe, fatigued against Kinshiki, by the way. That was after teleporting, which takes around, I believe it's 30% of his chakra when he teleports. So this was him around arguably 2/3 of his power and still bodied and cut off a horn of an Otsutsuki level threat in Kinshiki. Again, Otsutsuki's scale above any of the Hokage besides Naruto. And arguably Kakashi if you take the novels as canonical, so DMS Kakashi, but he just scales blatantly above Jiraiya. I mean, and you can't even use Urashiki going against him because that's not canonical either, so that doesn't work either. Jiraiya does not scale to Otsutsuki. That's complete nonsense. And that was just fan service, to be honest. Urashiki even contending with getting bored to a Naruto. It's just complete fan service. So, and it's not canonical. So clearly, Adult Sasuke absolutely obliterates Jiraiya. So. It's that simple, folks.
I hope no one disagrees with that as well.
Yeah, if you disagree with that and really take Urashiki's little fan service moment as canonical, yeah, you got some problems. But pretty much, Adult Sasuke destroys him. So yeah, folks, I think that's all the versions. I mean, there is a post-nerf Sasuke who still bodies Jiraiya. We don't need to discuss that.
Yeah, absolutely.
He would still destroy him with one Sharingan and one arm. He'd still obliterate. The contentious ones were heavy Sasuke versus Jiraiya. Those were very, very contentious, and I know this debate will continue on. Not even the very best minds like Seth and Swag were able to answer it. Even they disagreed. So you let us know again. Let us know of your thoughts on all of these. Maybe you have different opinions, different ways of scaling. Again, speculation and headcanon are inevitable. So we gave our best rational arguments. Even if we did disagree, they're both valid, and it depends on your lens and your perspective. Both are valid, and if you're on either side, I don't really blame you. So let us know your thoughts on all of these, folks. We hope you guys enjoyed the video. We'll be back with more content. Let us know if you enjoyed this kind of content. Leave a like. Leave a comment, show us some support, and we'll do more of these in the future. And I appreciate Pimpin for coming on. We'll catch you in the next one, folks. Stay classy. Man.